Welcome to my channel, Shadows of the Past. If you enjoy the content, please like, comment, and subscribe.
In the cold winter of 1692, in the small Puritan village of Salem, Massachusetts, an event unfolded that would leave one of the darkest stains on early American history, remembered for centuries as the Salem witch trials. Life in Salem was already strict and unforgiving, for this was a community built upon Puritan values, where daily life revolved around the church, the Bible, and the constant fear of sin, damnation, and the devil's presence in the world. The people of Salem lived with rigid rules, believing that God watched every action, and that Satan lurked around every corner, waiting to tempt them into evil. Superstition was common, and unexplained misfortunes, whether a sudden illness, a failed harvest, or a child's strange behavior, were often blamed on witches or demonic forces. It was in this tense environment that a spark of hysteria began when two young girls, Betty Parris, the daughter of the village minister, Samuel Parris, and her cousin Abigail Williams, began to exhibit strange fits. They screamed, contorted their bodies into unnatural positions, and spoke in ways that seemed beyond their control. Doctors were unable to explain their condition, and in the deeply religious worldview of the Puritans, if medicine could not explain it, the devil surely could. Under pressure to identify the cause, the girls named 3 women as witches: Tituba, an enslaved woman from the Caribbean who lived in Reverend Parris's household; Sarah Good, a destitute beggar who was disliked in the community; and Sarah Osborne, a woman who had challenged traditional norms by not attending church regularly and by managing property in ways that defied expectations for women. These accusations, though shocking, were believable to a society already primed to see the devil's hand in daily life. Soon, the accusations multiplied, as more girls in the village began displaying similar fits and claiming to see spirits tormenting them. The idea of a witchcraft conspiracy took hold. Fear spread like wildfire. Neighbors accused neighbors. Old grudges, land disputes, and personal vendettas were given new life under the guise of rooting out witches. What began as a few accusations quickly spiraled into a full-scale panic. The colonial government of Massachusetts responded by establishing a special court, the Court of Oyer and Terminer, to hear the cases of the accused. In this court, the rules of evidence were unlike anything we would consider fair or just today. Spectral evidence was allowed, meaning that if a girl claimed she saw someone's spirit tormenting her in a dream or vision, that was accepted as valid testimony. Hearsay, rumors, and personal suspicions became grounds for arrest. The accused were often interrogated harshly and pressured to confess. Some, hoping to save their lives, admitted to witchcraft and named others as accomplices, fueling the hysteria further. In this climate of fear, the line between truth and falsehood disappeared. Over the course of 1692, more than 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft. Prisons overflowed with men and women, young and old, rich and poor, all caught in the web of suspicion. Trials were swift, and the outcomes were often predetermined by fear rather than evidence. 20 people would ultimately be executed. 19 were hanged on Gallows Hill, a bleak spot outside Salem Village. And one man, Giles Corey, met a unique and horrific fate. Refusing to enter a plea, Giles was pressed to death with heavy stones placed upon his chest, his only recorded words being more weight. A defiant stand against a court he knew to be unjust. His wife, Martha Corey, was also hanged. Families were destroyed, reputations shattered, and the community itself began to unravel under the weight of paranoia. Some of those accused were pillars of the community: church-going women, respected farmers, even the wife of the governor's minister. Fear was indiscriminate, striking down the innocent without mercy. Children testified against parents, servants against masters, and friends against neighbors. The trials were fueled not only by fear of the devil, but also by the complex social, political, and economic tensions simmering in Salem. disputes over land ownership, long-standing rivalries between families, and divisions between Salem Village and Salem Town all contributed to the accusations. In this way, witchcraft became the weapon through which personal grievances could be settled under the cloak of righteousness. As the summer of 1692 turned to fall, cracks began to show in the hysteria. Some leaders of the colony, including Increase Mather, a prominent Puritan minister, began to question the reliance on spectral evidence. He argued that it was better for 10 guilty persons to go free than for one innocent to be condemned. The governor of Massachusetts, William Phips, alarmed by the growing chaos and influenced by Mather's warnings, eventually stepped in. In October of 1692, the Court of Oyer and Terminer was dissolved. A new court was established, and spectral evidence was no longer allowed. With this change, the flood of accusations slowed, and the executions ceased. By May of 1693, the remaining prisoners were released, and the nightmare of the Salem witch trials began to fade. But for the families of those who had been executed, the scars remained. Over time, remorse crept into the community. Judges and jurors admitted their error. Samuel Sewall, one of the judges who had condemned many to death, publicly confessed his guilt and begged for forgiveness. In 1711, the Massachusetts legislature passed a bill restoring the rights and good names of the accused and granted compensation to their heirs. Though no amount of money could erase the injustice, the Salem witch trials left behind a legacy of fear and a cautionary tale about the dangers of mass hysteria, blind faith, and the collapse of due process. Today, Salem is a place of remembrance. Museums, memorials, and historic sites tell the story of 1692, attracting visitors from around the world. The city embraces its dark past, with ghost tours and Halloween celebrations. Yet behind the modern-day fascination lies a somber reminder of human vulnerability. The trials serve as a stark lesson in how fear can override reason, how societies can turn against their own, and how the quest for purity can lead to unspeakable cruelty. The Salem witch trials endure not just as an episode in American history, but as a timeless warning. When fear is allowed to rule, justice dies, and innocent lives are destroyed. And so, more than 3 centuries later, we remember the victims of Salem not as witches, but as ordinary men and women who paid the ultimate price for a society consumed by fear and blinded by superstition. Their story reminds us of the fragile line between order and chaos, reason and madness, truth and lies, and it challenges us to ensure that such a tragedy never repeats itself in Salem or anywhere else in the world.